Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
Well, welcome to Relationships Inside Out, where today we're going to talk about past baggage and new relationships.
Baggage. Okay, so I often hear people say, why are the same issues occurring in this relationship as my last one? I just know how to pick them. I always pick the douchebags. Honey, you're a part of this because you have past baggage in your new relationship.
Yeah, and we talk about past baggage. That's, the non-clinical term. It could also be seen as like previous trauma from relationships in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that's a romantic relationship or family relationship, these are experiences that we have that, were traumatic in some sense or shaped our narrative in a way that we behave or react in often unconscious ways. And it shows up in our current relationship dynamics. And they may not be the best. And a good example, just to kind of before we delve into it, would be if somebody grew up where they were always walking on eggshells, and never felt secure attachment to their parents or something. And then in this current relationship, they are in the same. And so you see maybe more jealousy or something.
Anxiety, reactivity.
Yeah.
So it's these old things that we do or experience that we bring forward. Some of them are things like trauma or abuse. And what comes out of that might be a more timid sense of self. It might be not opening up or being vulnerable, not sharing. It might also be the opposite of over indulging in the relationship, of falling deeply really quickly, of ignoring red flags, that piece too.
And the term is, they say past baggage, but it's also current because it's still existing.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And it could be more like on a mental health level, like depression. And so maybe there's just not effort or there's not intimacy in the current relationship because there's things going on your side that has to do. And the goal is not to put blame on anywhere. It's to be, how do we be holistic in our observation of how to improve our relationships? And today we're talking about on ourselves. A lot of couples and their partners tend to want to blame the other person. I always find the narcissist. And then you start looking at symptoms. You're like, well, this person's the narcissist tendencies.
How often do we look back at our past relationship failures and be like, oh, that was my fault. I really fucked that up.
Oh, never.
Never. It's always, God, they were such an asshole. What a douchebag. I can't believe I dated someone like that. Now I've got this really hot, nice guy. And guess what? You're going to screw it up again. Because if you can't acknowledge your role in the demise, which everyone has a role in every relationship, except for abuse. Abuse is never warranted. We've said this before.
Yeah.
Outside of that, everyone has a role in the relationship. So it's important that you do a deep dive on, how did I contribute to the toxicity that happened? How did I contribute to the lack of connection, to the conflict, so that you can fix it? Otherwise, you will ruin the next one.
And this brings in previous episodes that we talked about, because this is really a big thing that we see continually when working with families and couples. And so I think it's important for us to talk about again, in the sense that our own well-being, our own trauma, all of this stuff serves as a basis for how this reaction is going to be, how the relationship dynamics are going to be, whether that means you're going to be reactive and continue to be reactive. And the part that's tough for me is when people aren't willing to be aware of that. And I think that's what I hope a lot of people get from here is just put down your guard for a second, explore yourself, and be aware of, what are my roles? It doesn't mean you're taking full responsibility. It's, what do I have control over? Because I don't have control over changing my partner. I have control over changing what I'm doing and what might be contributing to these unhealthy dynamics where we are criticizing and fighting, or my partner doesn't continues to shut down. Oh, interesting. The language I'm using in the language I'm using from my family that I learned, because that's how they fight, is making my partner feel attacked. They're shutting down. Oh, I need to find a different way to talk about this. Or I have past relationship trauma where I was continually left. And so now I'm highly reactive anytime my partner leaves and doesn't give me reassurance. Little things.
Or even if they don't answer their phone one time, right? I'm reactive about that abandonment issue.
Or respond to a text in a certain time. Yeah.
And I want to be clear. We're not saying that you should judge yourself and be hard on yourself.
Exactly.
You can't help if you're abandoned. You can't help that you have this deep trauma. But how you react to it unfortunately is your responsibility, even if you didn't choose the circumstances that occurred. Example, common one we see. My partner cheated on me. He's a piece of shit, so I left him. Fair enough.
Good.
Leave too.
Yeah.
But now in the next relationship, I'm checking my partner's phone. I'm checking their emails.
Yes.
I am constantly up their ass about where they are, who they're with, all the things. They weren't the ones that cheated on you, but you brought that baggage with you. You didn't choose to be cheated on. And in fact, you should have left. Nothing you did warrants that. And does this partner really deserve me not trusting them, judging them, being skeptical of them? That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And your choice to leave in the kind of case of infidelity, that's a choice. Some people choose to stay.
True.
And
Actually, most couples choose to stay.
Yeah. Here I'm the one coughing and you're sick. Yeah, I guess the colds are going around this season. And I think another one that I see a lot that people don't recognize is when one partner pushes the other away because they can't have anyone get close because in the past they've been hurt so much. It's not safe enough to get close. And in these relationships, you typically see there's not a deep connection. You don't feel intimate.
There's a big wall. I talk about it like a porcupine, right? If a porcupine feels scared, what's it going to do? Its quills are going to go up. If I'm perpetually feeling scared, the next relationship I enter, the next hand that reaches to touch me, my quills are already up. You have to learn to put those quills down or no one's ever going to get close enough to actually connect with you and stay and change this pattern of breakup.
And I love this area and I see this. I don't know why this one fascinates me the most because I see this in dating a lot and working with individuals who are wanting to find a partner. And you're like, well, what happens? What's going on? And they don't let people get close enough to want to stay around. And they're like, well, nobody wants to be with me. And it's like, okay, well, what do you have control over? Oh, interesting. So when this person does this, you respond by avoiding and running.
Or blowing up or gaslighting, right? It's hard to admit, oh shit, I'm the one that did that. I'm the one that gaslit. I'm the one that called names. I'm the one that was critical. That's a really vulnerable place to be. And it is so important if we're going to have relationship success.
Yeah, and we're not saying that these responses or behaviors that are maladaptive are the reason why conflict happens, but it's the reason why you can't work through conflict effectively too.
Fair.
Because maybe the way your partner is responding to you is not a good. Running and always taking space so you can't resolve it is probably not good.
Fair.
Being able to feel comfortable enough and safe enough to turn toward, that would help you kind of get through it. Because fights are going to happen. Conflict's going to happen. It's really how you get through it. And a lot of these maladaptive behaviors prevent that. They're a barrier to it. And they also elicit conflict with the checking we've talked about, or the distancing where the partner feels like my partner doesn't care. You see that narrative a lot for the partner where their partner distances or shuts down or doesn't let them get close. You see that they're cold or they're callous. They don't care about me.
So what do we do about it?
Oh, I don't know.
Because everyone, it's got their baggage, right? We all have mommy issues, daddy issues, ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, whatever issues, even bullying in school, friends. Every person has got their issues.
Yeah.
So what the heck do we do about it?
And I think the focus of today is how do we manage it ourselves?
Yep.
We talk a lot about relationships, and how we manage things individually is not independent of what happens in our relationships. And that doesn't just mean romantic. That's also our family too.
And friendships and community and work.
So how we're responding, how we're reacting, I think this self-growth is extremely important way. The first is being aware and just being open to explore and being okay to be imperfect.
Introspection. Dig deep. If I barked off at a coworker, why'd I do that?
They're a narcissist.
Temptation. I've been there. Might have done it a few times. But what was it in me that got stirred up? Okay, maybe they were an asshole. True.
Yeah.
But why did I let their behavior lead to my reaction in the way it did? Why did I feel so defensive, so shut down, so whatever? Get curious with yourself, not judging, not, oh my gosh, I'm such a bitch. How did I do that? I can't believe I did that again. That's not going to serve you. All that's going to do is perpetuate probably some of that baggage, and it's going to lead to you shutting down more. Instead, flip the script. Get curious. What part of me came up in that? What part of me needed to protect myself? Where does that come from? What could I have done different?
These are great questions to explore with a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is where a lot of the growth comes and happens, is you have somebody that can sit objectively and ask the questions that get you deeper.
Without judgment.
Without judgment.
So start getting curious with yourself. What else can we do? Right? It's even asking, and this is very vulnerable. Okay. I admit that. But I've had clients take inventory with the people they trust and they love. What are things that they're what we call collateral? Notice about the reactivity. What do they notice about them in relationships? Are there things that their loved ones think they could work on? What are the things their loved ones love about them? What are the good things? Right? But even asking people for external feedback, very vulnerable and so powerful in terms of work here.
Yeah. You have to feel comfortable to be vulnerable in that sense.
Oh, yeah.
Working on self-worth is going to be important. And that, I think about where that shows up is when somebody's self-worth is put into how they're likable by others. And unfortunately, we have to make some meaning of what likability means. So, if my partner or this friend or my family do this, that means they like me. If they don't engage in this specific behavior every time, then something's wrong.
They don't respond right away. If they don't invite me to everything, if whatever.
So we might react to it. So self-worth, working on our perceptions. So a lot of times working with couples. So first I want to understand what's going on the individual level that's impacting their dynamics. And I try to get those pieces work. Sometimes I send them off to individual therapy to work on that first, to come back because it might be too reactive. But then with the whole, I lost my train of thought. That's wonderful.
The the pieces within us that we have
perception.
to work through. Yes.
So we're working with the couples. One thing that drives our reactions to others is our perception of their behavior. And if we continue to perceive that they have malintent, or the reason why they're distancing is because they don't like me, or they don't love me, or I did something wrong, then I'm going to react in a way that might be out of insecurity. If I'm continually being criticized by my partner, it's very hard to depersonalize here, but that's the main goal, is through our perception, depersonalize it and realize something's going on for them. It's hard to turn toward and have compassion if our perception is that I am bad.
They call me a bitch because I am one.
Yeah.
Not because they're stressed, they're depressed, they don't have their own self-regulation, whatever it might be.
Or they're just not good at communicating effectively.
Truth.
So perception is, I think, a big one. Not for everybody, but for me, it comes up a lot with couples.
And looking at perception in terms of what colors it, right? If I'm judging myself, if I'm critical of myself, if I'm doubting myself, so back to that self-worth, it's going to color the way I perceive things. I'm going to assume that any misstep by someone else is my fault. I'm going to perceive that any twitch of the cheek, eye roll, it's on me, not that they've had a really hard day and we're thinking about something not even related to me and had a reaction.
And why the perceptions are important is because they serve as a gateway to maybe deeper underlying things. Because our perceptions are shaped by experiences.
Yeah.
And if we notice that our perception continually is negative or continually personalizes myself, that might be a time to go explore that and what underlies those perceptions. Because those perceptions are essentially the meaning we've made about why something's occurring or happened. And what's shaping that meaning is past experiences, potentially trauma, potentially not such good experiences.
Another thing that we can do in this area is making amends. So part of the baggage we bring forward is still this vitriol towards someone, this anger, hatred. How do we create forgiveness? How do we create compassion? How do we atone for the things we've done? Right? So working on setting boundaries in some of those relationships, but also but also letting go of those wounds. Because if you bring those wounds forward, it will color your perception. It will color your self-acceptance, your acceptance of the new person. So if it is working with a therapist or by yourself, processing those wounds, and how do we get to a place of forgiveness for self and other?
And what happens when we can't work on that is that the new partner is not the past partners or not the past parent or friend or whatever. However, our survival brain is engaging in confirmation bias of could they be? this is why they could be that person that hurt me. And we're continually checking for the safety, and we can easily convince ourselves that they're not safe. And then
you don't even know what's happening.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, because then we're pushing away, or we're responding in a reactionary, and then that partner responds accordingly. And then it's like, see, I told you, this is exactly
I knew you were just like so-and-so.
I knew you were a narcissist.
I'll hear people say like, I'm not your mom, or don't be like your mom.
Oh,
or don't be like my mom, whatever it is. That right there tells me that there are wounds that have not been dealt with. And thus people are carrying their suitcases right along with them to this relationship.
Yeah. When I observe a couple interaction and one is super reactive to something that would be otherwise just, minute, somebody that's worked on themselves, is they distance themselves because they need space. And that person is like, they don't love me anymore. It just goes to this extreme catastrophic explanation, going back to the perceptions.
And what's crazy about that, and often we're not aware what can send us there. So some of that baggage, you may not even know exists. So it could be that that person wore a similar outfit. It could be that that person used a similar phrasing, or their cheeks got flushed like so-and-so, or whatever. These little teeny triggers add up, and it sends us right back. If your body is prone to going right back because of those little things, that tells you you've got some work to do.
And an interesting thing also in the context of past baggage or trauma as well is when an anniversary date comes up. And somehow there tends to be more conflict in the relationships.
Even the month.
That month, and there tends to be more conflict, and they're like, what's happening? And then you explore a little further, and underlying that is, well, that year, 6 years ago is when whatever trauma happened. And now it's coming out in the relationship, but they're unaware of it.
Talking about that openly, right? Talking about, hey, I'm feeling really prickly about this. I'm not sure why, but I'm feeling really prickly. It lets my partner know I'm tuning in to the fact that I'm reactive right now, and that I'm going to do something about it. I just don't know what that is quite yet. That's part of this work, is not just getting rid of all the baggage, because some of it you can't. Some traumas don't go away. It is, how do I learn how to work with it rather than it dragging me down every time?
Yeah. And we were sitting here talking about what do we do about it. And I think the overarching answer is just explore yourself, be self-aware, and wonder how your reactions might be influencing it and where those reactions are coming from. And go explore that with a therapist.
It's on you. That is the hard part that I have to tell people every time I sit down in my chair. It's on you.
What do you mean? You made me feel this way.
It's my soapbox.
Say it again. I mean, talk about that.
No one can make you feel anything. No one. Your reaction, your emotional state is yours and yours alone. They can do pain in the ass things that arguably are pain in the ass things.
And intentional too.
But how I respond, whether it's to allow them to keep wounding me, or to get really angry, or whatever, or engage in the bullshit back and forth, that's on me. What sucks about that is when it's something like trauma. You didn't ask for it. You didn't want it. And yet it's yours to deal with, and yours alone. That is really hard to hold in therapy when we talk about trauma and we talk about how is this impacting your relationship now? Well, it's not my fault that I was assaulted. It's not my fault that this thing occurred. You're right. And it's unfair and it's awful, and it is still yours. It sucks. All of it sucks. And your partner being a douchebag and cheating on you and whatever, it sucks. And you still have to deal with it. You have to deal with your reaction and reactivity to it.
Yeah, it's not wise to depend on an external factor like another person or other thing to help regulate. And that's another good sign, in my opinion, is when you don't necessarily have the space to then decide how you want to process or feel about it, and it just is an instantaneous reaction, a trigger. That might be a sign that there's something's coming up.
Something's coming up, right? But I can't look at my partner and say, well, if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't react this way. Nope. You are responsible for your reaction. If they're perpetually being an asshole to you, take space from that person. But that's on you, right? We can't look at the other person and say, it's your job to help me calm down. It's your job to not do the thing that triggers me. It's your job to fix. Nope.
There can be support in that.
Absolutely.
And I think, a partner being conscientious of what those triggers might be. Certain languages, especially I think about victims of sexual abuse growing up. There are certain trigger words. Just don't say them. That's an easy responsibility for a partner to be aware of, but that has to be communicated, of course.
Yes.
If you know the certain clothes or certain smells, those are easy things you can support your partner to not be triggered.
Sure.
Not telling them, well, just don't be triggered.
Or get over it.
Get over it. That's not my fault, those past stuff. I'm not those people. All that's true. And that's not helping that process. So in the partner in this context, find ways that you can support. It's not all on you.
It's not your responsibility, and you can be supportive.
Yeah.
In our culture, we often get mixed up that supportive means I'm responsible. They're different. They're different concepts. I can love my partner through something. I can rub his back. I can encourage him. I can try to accommodate in the ways that I can. And he is still responsible, right? For his stuff. I can support him and love him. He's still got to work with it. It's not mine.
None of the growth that's necessary for a relationship in these contexts happen if we don't look at ourselves in this baggage. And I know this when I work with couples, and I cannot challenge or push the partner that is reactive.
All the time. All the time.
That is a good sign for me they're not in a place to move forward.
Yeah.
Until that can soften and be looked at and explored in a very safe and gradual way that they don't feel blamed. It's not their fault that their body has decided, and mind, and that these reactions are a process to the trauma. That's not their fault either. And as you said before, it's their responsibility to want to work on these so they can have healthy relationships moving forward. If we don't work on these, I would not anticipate healthy relationships moving forward. You
bring up an important thing. When you get to the base of baggage trauma, there's a lot of neuroscience behind it. And I'm going to oversimplify it. Think about animals, right? If I'm coming at an animal and I'm scary and aggressive, what's it going to do? It's going to back up in a corner. It's going to show me its teeth, and it's going to growl or bite, right? It's going to get mean. It's going to attack back. People are animals at their core. And if we can remember that, it helps with compassion for ourselves and others. But also it tells you if you are in that state, you're in your fight or flight brain. That is not the same. That's your hindbrain. That's not the same part of the brain that accesses empathy and rationality and compassion. That is more your frontal brain or your prefrontal cortex. You cannot access both at the same time. So if you find that you are often in that primal animal survival state, that's a sign we've got some work to do before we can even touch the relationship stuff. We've got to attend to that, because that's primal. You are not going to talk your way out of that.
Yeah. And for your brain, after experiencing something traumatic, it's just safer to assume threat.
Yeah.
It goes overboard to protect you. It's doing a good job to protect you. However, that doesn't necessarily bode well in relationships when the partner, who's maybe a new partner or a new friend, or is continually perceived as a threat. Again, that confirmation bias comes up. The brain is wanting to know how they can be a threat rather than having a balanced perspective. That's another, I guess, a good example that can highlight this is somebody was in a car accident and they were hit by a FedEx truck. Now all FedEx trucks are dangerous. Our brain overgeneralizes.
All box trucks.
Yeah, they overgeneralize. So it does happen. And that, if we're not willing, if that continually is the barrier in the porcupine, then there's not going to be growth.
So doing that work, right? If you see yourself bringing that baggage with, even if the baggage wasn't your choice, even if it wasn't your fault, even if it's not fair, you have to deal with it to have that healthy, successful relationship. Not that you won't have speed bumps. Every relationship has speed bumps. But if there are things we can do to avoid perpetual speed bumps or to reduce reactivity and have conflict in a healthy manner, all the better. But we are responsible for that baggage. And like I said, everyone's got it. I have it. I'm sure you do, Greg. I know that might be hard to admit.
I don't have just baggage. I got cargo planes.
Preach. Preach.
Cargo planes. My poor wife.
And owning it, right? Then we give ourselves a chance to not be dragging those suitcases with us to the next relationship.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Relationships Inside Out, where today we talked about leaving that old baggage behind before starting a new.
Brought up all my baggage, so now.
Oh, I know, right? You're going through your Rolodex, right? As always, if anyone has any questions, topic suggestions, anything like that, Feel free to email us at relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks.